Hey, this is Tom from Audio Ideal, and today I'm going to be showing you the rough structuring of a track so you can create the best arrangements for your music. So this guide is of course a fairly general guide. It would apply to most electronic genres as well as pop music and even rock music, but we'll be looking at it as if it was maybe a popular house song for a club or even a dubstep song. It doesn't really matter the tempo or the style. This is just a general view, and this will hopefully help you out when you are arranging your tracks. So what we're going to look at today is the different channels and the different tracks you might have. So just a quick overview, we have hi-hats here, we've got a snare, and we have two kicks. The kick one is quite clicky, and then the second one is quite bassy, and these would get laid together in your track, so you'd have them combined for the drop and the heavier sections, and then you'd maybe go for the slightly lighter click for the non-heavy sections such as the initial intro and maybe even during the verses. We have a bass line, we've got our crash and effects. I've put them all together so it's a bit simpler. Same with the synths, there'd probably be multiple layered synths, but we're keeping them together. And then of course the vocals, you'd probably have several vocal channels for different harmonies and different sections, and this bit at the bottom is just my voice so you can hear me. So let's look at the very start of the track. We have our intro. Typically the intro of the track is just a beat, it's the main beat taken from the track, and this is so when in the club the DJ can mix your track in. So if you go on YouTube you can normally find the original mix of a track and the radio edit. The radio edits tend to leave out this intro, and they tend to also leave out the outro, and this is just to take the main bulk of the song, the main melodic ideas and drops, and play them without having a big 30-second or minute long introduction which is solely beat. So the reason tracks have intros like this is for the DJ to mix in. It does start off with 2 or 4 bars of just a beat, followed by a slightly heavier beat with the bass line. This bass groove tends to be reflective of the drop, but it might not be, and it also works well with the main synth riff and melody. So this is just to bring the track in, and the main ideas develop from this part here, which is the break. So what the break does is it takes out the drums, normally with a crash and a down effect, and slowly introduces the main synth riff before kicking into the verse. So the verse could be classed as this whole region, building up to the chorus or the drop. So with the intro of the main synth riff, you could actually kick in the song here on the radio edit, or you could kick it in here. It really depends on how the song works, how it develops in this section. But wherever it is in the break, you really want to start introducing the main synth riff, probably bring it up a bit, and then introduce the vocals and the verse with a bit of a crash or a kick. You could have a bit of a light drum beat in here. I've left it out for now because a lot of piano house just has the synths or the pianos and vocals playing here. Same goes for dubstep. A lot of the time you've just got maybe an arpeggio and some atmospheric sounds before it kicks into the build. So you've got the main synth riff and the verse introducing. Typically, to keep the verse interesting, you also have an alternate riff. And this is really important because you don't want your song to just be the same loop of the same kind of chord progression or melody. You really want to stay away from just looping a sound throughout the whole song because that makes it boring. So come up with a melody, come up with an alternate melody, and even if the vocal style stays the same over them, it just gives the song an overall change to the vibe and allows the listener to kind of know it's building up. So the alternate riff can maybe have a bit more energy. It could also lose a lot of energy, so the drop is a bit harder. But as you're going into this build section, you tend to be rising the overall energy of the track in anticipation of the drop. A lot of the time you have the snare drum rolling, going faster and faster. You could also have the kick drum doing this, or even the hi-hats. And you really want to maintain the upwards energy rising in this whole section. The longer this section is, the more anticipation the build has, but typically you don't want it too long because you don't want everyone standing on the dance floor getting bored. The vocals tend to sit in the middle section of this, leaving the last little section to just be sheer energy of the riser, and then typically right before the drop there's either a vocal shout or it could even be a drum fill, maybe with the toms or the snare. So the drop comes in here, and it's typically in two parts. You have the first section, which is these 4 or 8 bars. Then you have the second section, which is a variation of the drop. And again, this is to keep the listener engaged. You don't want the same loop going over and over again. So even if it's just a small changeover, even jumping up the melody an octave or adding a bit more energy to the bass, it's really important to keep it as engaging as possible. A lot of the time, introducing the second part, the drums leave out for the first beat or two and then kick back in. And here you can see that we've got the clicky bass and we've got the subby bass coming in, and these are layered tightly together. This is for the maximum low frequency kind of weight that makes a drop heavy. Going on to the second verse and the second build, you have a similar break to the first one. You could in fact copy this whole section over, put new vocals over it. You want to introduce the main riff and maybe even have a second alternate riff. It could be a longer build up, or it could be a variation of the build up. And this is important again to keep engagement of the listener. And this goes into the second drop. The second drop could even be twice as long with more development into it. A lot of the time artists have a heavier second drop, and this allows the song to increase in energy as it progresses. You could even have something which is an intermediate drop. So what happens is it maybe plays the first bit of the first drop with another additional riser going into an even heavier section. So you could actually do what's called a double drop, where the bass drops and then gets even bigger and then drops even harder with a more developed drop. Depending on how long you want your song to be, you could even have a third verse with a third drop, but for simplicity I've just kept it the same here and just keeping with 2. So the final bit, the outro, which is this section and this section, is just the intro in reverse. You tend to have the bass line and the sub kick going in the first section, and then you take them out so the new track can mix in and the DJ can play the new song's bass line in this region here, and that allows them to be able to introduce a new track while elements of the former track, which is this one, are still remaining. And this is this part where the DJ will fade out. So to give you an idea of how this is pretty accurate, we'll look at the time. This song is at 120 BPM, and a lot of house songs are about 5 minutes and 20 seconds. If we go up to 128, you're looking at about 5 minutes for an original mix, and this is fairly typical of a lot of house songs. You could look at, maybe if it was a dubstep track, we could go to 140, and you'll see it's maybe 4.5 minutes long, and a lot of tracks tend to be roughly this amount. So I hope this gives you a good idea of roughly the structuring of a track. It can of course be changed depending on the direction of your track you want to go, but typically they follow this sort of pattern with intro of drum beat, break, bring in your main melody, get an alternate riff coming in, bring up the riser, first drop in 2 sections to keep interest, break down again, second verse, alternative riser maybe, and second drop, followed by an outro. I hope this has been helpful, and I know it was quite a short video, but I hope you can take something from it. A lot of people always ask how to arrange tracks, and even just looking at the structure of another song, just put a song in your DAW, set it to the right time, and mark out the different sections, and you'll see quite often they conform to this sort of shape. And this is because it's a shape that works, it keeps listeners engaged, and it follows the standard pattern of verse, chorus, and look into different patterns and different ways to make it engaging, because this isn't the only way to do it. If all your music's the same as everyone else's, then it is of course boring. If you've got any suggestions, put them in the comments, it can help other watchers. And please support me on Facebook. I also have a Patreon account, so even $1 a month will help me create better videos. I've recently been able to buy a new microphone to improve the quality, and I've been putting up exclusive content for the people who support me, including sample packs and other resources to help you out. Thank you very much for watching, and definitely give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.